Pay close attention to this because it did not find you without reason. Something has changed, not in a minor or easily forgotten way, not in the quiet and passing way that ordinary emotions come and go. Something deep has shifted. The kind of shift that develops in silence over a long period of time and eventually becomes too heavy to keep hidden beneath the surface of daily life. There is someone connected to you who has been running from what they feel, and for a considerable stretch of time, they very nearly had themselves convinced that the running had worked. They filled their days with activity. They surrounded themselves with distraction. They maintained walls around themselves that they dressed up as self-control and independence. But control is a fragile thing. It can develop cracks overnight. It can come apart in a single moment. It can vanish completely the second a person genuinely confronts the possibility that someone they kept at arm's length may not remain within reach indefinitely. That is where this story begins. Not from a place of peace or confidence, from pressure, from fear, from that sharp and sinking recognition that comes when someone understands they may have spent too long hesitating. If you have been picking up on a strange energy lately, mixed signals that confused you, sudden silence, or an invisible pull you could not find a rational explanation for, stay with this. What you are about to hear may bring every scattered piece into a clearer picture. This person did not stop feeling things. That is the part that gets misread most often. It was never indifference. It was actually the opposite of indifference. They were feeling too much and handling it badly. Rather than speaking, they went inward. Rather than being honest, they made themselves distant. Rather than risking vulnerability, they settled into the familiar comfort of delay. And delay has a quietly destructive quality that disguises itself as harmless while it slowly erodes everything meaningful around it. In the beginning, the damage looks insignificant. One unsent message, one conversation that kept getting postponed, one more day of silence, one more excuse that seemed reasonable at the time. But what a person avoids does not simply dissolve. It accumulates. It gathers weight beneath the surface and waits. It sits there patiently until one night it presses upward with more force than usual, and suddenly every feeling they had been carefully burying comes flooding back at once. That is the urgency behind all of this. It is not organized or dignified. It is messy and human. It is the particular panic of someone who is now seeing with clarity what they should have recognized much earlier. Maybe a certain sound reminded them of you. Maybe they passed a place that held a memory, or a song came on at an unexpected moment, and your presence came back so vividly it shook them loose from wherever they had been trying to stay. Maybe life simply became quiet enough that there was nothing left to drown the truth out with. Whatever the specific trigger was, it landed with real weight. And the thought they cannot walk away from now is straightforward. If they continue doing nothing, they may actually lose you permanently. That realization rarely lands during busy hours. It tends to arrive when the room has gone dark and the phone sits still. It shows up when conversation with other people feels hollow and pointless. It appears after the day has finished and there are no more tasks to retreat behind and no more noise to hold the truth at a manageable distance. In those stripped-back moments, they feel the absence. Not simply your absence as a physical person, but the absence of what being genuinely close to you gave them access to. You made space for them without demanding anything in return. You understood things about them that they never fully articulated. You noticed the quiet shifts in their mood before they even had names for those shifts themselves. That kind of connection is not common. And rare things have a way of being taken for granted until they are no longer easy to access. That is what they are waking up to now, and this part matters, so do not let it pass by unnoticed. What they are experiencing is not only love, it is also the weight of loss. It is also fear. It is the jarring realization that someone who once felt reliably available now feels distant. Not because they are playing any kind of calculated game, but because they finally decided to protect their own peace. And that changes the entire situation. This is where it goes deeper. They are not simply afraid that you have changed. They are afraid you have changed in a direction they cannot undo, no matter what they say or do next. If they could speak without pride getting in between their words, without fear twisting each sentence into something defensive, without needing to justify their own behavior, the truth would be much simpler than all the confusion they generated. They would say they should have shown up earlier. They would say they kept assuming there would always be another opportunity. another opening, another moment when a few sincere words could still repair things. They would admit they underestimated what their silence actually cost. Many people do exactly that. They believe silence holds things in suspension. It does not. Silence changes trust. It changes the energy of a bond. It shifts how safe and secure a connection actually feels over time. The person who kept reaching eventually gets tired. The one who kept hoping gradually starts seeing things as they are rather than as they wished them to be. The one who held space for too long starts quietly pulling their heart back in order to protect it. That is what this person is finally beginning to understand. They are coming to see that choosing to do nothing was not a neutral position. It was still a choice. And choices leave marks. They shape how things end. They teach the other person what to realistically expect. When those choices repeat themselves consistently, they become a pattern. And the pattern is the thing now sitting in front of this person demanding to be acknowledged. They did not lose the closeness between you because they lacked any feeling. They lost it because they had feeling, but were too afraid to act on it. And fear kept speaking more loudly than everything honest inside them. That is a painful thing to sit in front of. There is also real guilt present in them. Not the performative kind that people display to seem emotionally sophisticated. The quieter kind. The kind that follows someone into unremarkable moments throughout their day. They feel it when they remember the times you were looking for clarity and received confusion instead. They feel it when they think about specific moments when a small act of genuine honesty could have redirected everything. But they chose distance each time because distance felt controllable. They believed keeping their guard up would protect them. What it actually did was protect them from growth while costing them something they are now realizing was genuinely valuable. They are beginning to see this now. They can trace back specific moments when you were still extending effort, when your patience was still open and available, when your care was still warm and present, when something real from their side could have genuinely met you in the middle. But they remained behind their hesitation. They kept waiting for the conditions to feel exactly right, and the conditions never aligned perfectly. That is another truth people tend to discover too late. Readiness is not a state that magically appears when the timing is finally perfect. It is a decision. Courage is a decision. Showing up is a decision. And while they waited to feel fully prepared for it, life continued forward. You continued changing. Your heart continued learning. Your silence continued meaning something different from what it used to mean. If this is resonating with your own experience, stay with it, because the next part explains why their energy has felt so inconsistent and uneven. They are divided against themselves right now. One part of them genuinely wants to reach toward you. Another part already understands that words by themselves may no longer be sufficient. That understanding is what troubles them most. Not simply that they miss you, but that they can sense you are no longer standing in the same emotional position you once occupied. Your tone has shifted. The pace of how you move has changed. The way you carry yourself has become different. You may still hold real care for them, but the chasing has ended. The repeating of yourself has ended. The painful and prolonged waiting has ended. There is a steadiness in you now that was built through genuine difficulty, and that steadiness communicates something that anger never could. Anger can still be connected to hope. It still shows investment. Calm carries a different message entirely. Calm can mean you have genuinely come to terms with what was real. Calm can mean you stopped arranging your emotional life around someone else's unresolved uncertainty. Calm can mean you found your own center again. And for someone who relied heavily on your patience being essentially endless, that shift in you is deeply unsettling. They leaned on your softness more than was fair. They counted on your understanding more than they ever acknowledged openly. Somewhere beneath their conscious awareness, they assumed you would remain emotionally available, even if they continued staying emotionally hidden. Now they can feel that assumption collapsing, and when that particular illusion breaks, the fear becomes louder because they are no longer simply wondering whether you still care. They are wondering whether they still matter to you in the way they once did. That question hits hard, harder than regret, harder than ordinary loneliness, because it forces them to imagine an actual future in which you continue forward without bitterness or drama or the need for any explanation from them at all. And that version of the future frightens them. This brings us to something important that gets missed when someone senses another person returning energetically toward them. Desperation and readiness are not the same thing. Missing someone and being genuinely capable of loving them well are not the same thing. Regret and actual change are not the same thing. This matters enormously. When someone begins feeling your absence sharply, they may be reaching toward you primarily because they want relief from the discomfort of losing you. But wanting relief from pain is not yet proof that they are capable of offering the consistency, the honesty, and the sustained emotional effort that building something real requires. Sometimes people move closer because loss frightens them, not because they have genuinely grown enough to hold something meaningful. That does not make their feelings dishonest. But feelings alone are never enough. You need to remember that and hold it close. Your heart has already paid a significant cost to learn what it has learned. You do not need to pay that same cost twice if they move toward you again. What genuinely matters is not the intensity of how they sound in any single moment. What matters is whether their actual behavior over time can carry the weight of whatever their words are promising. Because bonds are not rebuilt through beautiful language. They are rebuilt through truth repeated consistently over days and weeks and months. They are rebuilt through showing up when it is inconvenient, through being clear rather than endlessly confusing, through being steady rather than running hot for a while and then disappearing cold. And somewhere in the most honest part of themselves, they know this. That is precisely why they freeze before acting. They understand that the standard is genuinely different now. They know you are no longer moved by vague language and emotional intensity that never becomes sustained effort. But memories keep pressing against them regardless. Small ones, ordinary ones. That is how a real and deep connection haunts a person when they have walked away from it carelessly. Not always through dramatic scenes, but through steady and specific details. The way you checked on them without requiring any particular reason to do so. The way you noticed when something was slightly off with them before they said a word. The way your care never demanded that they perform in order to receive it. The way you made space for them without trying to manage or control what they did with that space. These things tend to feel unremarkable when they are present. They feel irreplaceable when they are gone. And right now, those memories are not giving this person comfort. They are exposing something. Every remembered act of genuine kindness forces a question they would prefer to avoid. Why did they distance themselves from something that actually felt safe and real? Why did they push away the very thing they later recognized they needed? The answer is uncomfortable. Because being close to you was asking something genuinely real from them. It was asking for honesty. It was asking for emotional accountability. It was asking them to stop using confusion as a cover and to become visible in an authentic way. For someone who has spent years surviving through avoidance and emotional distance, that kind of request can feel threatening even when what is actually being offered is love. So they stepped back. They delayed. They gave it names like caution or timing or not being ready. But underneath all of that, fear was making every decision. Fear of being truly seen. Fear of failing to measure up to what the moment required. Fear of having to become a different and more honest version of themselves. And now they are living with the results of allowing fear to lead. What makes all of this even heavier is that they can feel you no longer needing what you once hoped to receive from them. That shift carries real power. You are not falling apart under the weight of their silence anymore. You are not analyzing every pause for hidden meaning. You are not trying to decode every mixed signal into something hopeful. There is a strength in you now that was built the hard way, quietly and honestly. You sat inside disappointment long enough that it actually taught you something. You stopped reaching toward places where your effort was not being matched. You stopped filling hollow spaces with wishful thinking. You stopped arguing with what their behavior was showing you clearly. That kind of genuine growth changes the entire landscape of a situation, and the person on the other side of it feels that change. They feel that you are no longer organizing your emotional world around their uncertainty. They feel that your self-respect has stepped into a more prominent position. They feel that you may genuinely be okay, truly okay, even without them. And that is the exact point where the urgency in them sharpens most intensely. Because if you are truly okay, if you have found peace, if your heart is no longer waiting at the same door it used to wait at, then the dynamic they were used to operating within no longer functions. They cannot rely on your confusion anymore. They cannot count on your hope staying active indefinitely. They cannot assume that time will continue stretching in their favor without consequence. Suddenly everything feels very real. Every message left unsent feels heavier than it did before. Every truth left unspoken feels more costly. And they are feeling all of this now in a way they cannot set aside. They are also seeing something they should have recognized much earlier. You were never asking for perfection from them. You were asking for genuine presence. You were not looking for a grand or theatrical performance. You were looking for consistency. You were not asking them to become a completely different person overnight. You were asking them to live in alignment with what they told you they felt. That is a much simpler request than their fear made it appear. But simple does not mean easy for someone who has built their sense of self around avoiding exposure and emotional accountability. So when moments called for courage, they chose comfort instead. When the bond needed clarity, they chose delay instead. When your heart needed something steady, they offered uncertainty instead. Over time, that creates a particular kind of emotional exhaustion, not only in you, but eventually in them as well. Because carrying genuine feeling without ever expressing it is draining. Living with a truth while constantly acting against it is draining. Pretending not to care as deeply as you actually do is draining. So now they sit inside that tension. They want to move toward you, but they understand that movement requires something more substantial than longing. It requires genuine follow-through. It requires change that can survive past one emotional wave. That frightens them because fantasy is uncomplicated. Real love is a practice. It asks for behavior that remains steady. It asks for repair to actually happen. It asks for a genuine quality of humility. It asks for the end of old and comfortable excuses. That is why they feel caught between wanting to reach out and being unable to move. Their heart pulls in one direction. Their habits pull in the opposite direction. And between those two forces, they stay suspended. You need to hear this part clearly. Nothing here means you should put your life on hold and wait. Nothing here means you owe anyone immediate forgiveness. Nothing here means you should reopen your heart simply because someone is finally beginning to feel the consequences of their own prolonged hesitation. Your power is not in reacting to their panic. Your power is in staying honest with your own experience, in staying true to what the difficult journey you have been through actually taught you, in remembering what it cost to arrive at the peace you have found. If they do return, they are not returning to the same version of you that existed before. That version learned something real. That version grew. That version can now distinguish clearly between words that temporarily soothe and actions that actually stay consistent over time. So if any movement does happen in this situation, let it be genuine. Let it be demonstrated rather than simply declared. Let it exist in the open clarity of daylight rather than hiding inside the fog of emotionally charged moments. Because one honest and consistent action is worth more than 10 beautiful and elaborate speeches. One steady and accountable month is worth more than one intense and emotional night. One clear and genuine conversation is worth more than weeks of cryptic hints and loaded silence. Do not forget any of that. If this reached you at the right moment, then part of you already knows. The real question is not whether they feel something. The real question is whether what they feel is capable of becoming something solid and trustworthy over time. Those are not the same question, not even close. There are moments now when they imagine reaching for the phone, composing the message, saying the thing plainly, and allowing the outcome to be whatever it turns out to be. In those moments, they picture themselves being brave. They picture dropping the protective mask they have been wearing. They picture finally saying what should have been said long before now. But then another voice rises up, a voice assembled from old fear. It tells them it may already be too late. It tells them you may no longer feel toward them the way you once did. It tells them that if they do move forward now, they may have to face the reality they have been successfully avoiding. Rejection, consequence, accountability. And so they freeze again. They compose messages and delete them. They rehearse conversations in their mind that never actually happen. They live inside almost, and almost is a genuinely painful place to inhabit. It keeps a person emotionally occupied and internally exhausted while nothing changes in the actual world around them. That is likely why the energy surrounding this feels restless and unresolved. Something inside them is building up pressure without any release. They are not at peace. They are not settled. They are confronting the significant gap between what they genuinely feel and what they have actually done about those feelings. That gap can become genuinely unbearable after enough time has passed. It transforms memory into weight. It turns silence into noise. It makes every reminder of you function like a mirror suddenly placed in front of them that they did not ask to stand before. What they are truly facing is bigger than romance. It is bigger than simply missing you or feeling regret. They are encountering themselves in a serious way, possibly for the first time. They are beginning to see how much of their life has been shaped and directed by avoidance, how consistently fear dressed itself up in the clothing of logic, how many times they told themselves something was not the right moment when the actual truth was that they did not want to risk being genuinely and fully known. This is why your absence reaches them at a deeper level than they expected, because losing your presence does not only mean losing a person. It means losing the particular kind of reflection you offered them. You reflected depth. You reflected sincerity. You reflected the kind of emotional courage they were not yet willing to practice themselves. And when that reflection is no longer available to them in the same way, the lesson becomes much harder to avoid. They feel what is missing, yes, but they also feel what that missing is saying about them. And that is a genuinely different kind of pain. It is not simply heartbreak. It is self-recognition. It is the uncomfortable act of seeing that they may have damaged something genuinely meaningful because they refused to become honest when honesty was what the situation required. Those realizations do not move through a person quickly. They settle, they echo, they reshape people, or at least they have the capacity to, if the person in question chooses to allow them to do that work. And this is where what is unfolding becomes important for you, not only for them. Because when someone is waking up late to the consequences of their own behavior, it can create a genuine pull in you as well. Old energy can stir unexpectedly. Old questions can resurface. You may feel a natural desire to look back and wonder what could still develop. That is a completely human response. But be thoughtful with nostalgia. Nostalgia has a tendency to remember feeling more clearly than it remembers behavior. It recalls hope more vividly than it recalls confusion. It softens the things that genuinely hurt at the time they were happening. So if they do appear, if they do reach out and attempt to reopen what was left unresolved between you, receive it with your full heart, but also with your full wisdom working alongside it. Let your memory hold the silence. Let your memory hold the imbalance that existed. Let your memory hold the length of time you waited for something that should have been offered freely. This does not mean becoming cold or armored. It means becoming clear. It means allowing truth to remain truth even as emotion starts moving again. Because sometimes a person's late awakening is genuine, but still arrives too late to change what needed to be changed when it could have been changed. Sometimes the lesson transforms them in real ways, but not within the window the connection required. Sometimes closure does not come through reunion. Sometimes it arrives through seeing with complete clarity that your love was genuine, your effort was real, and your decision to finally step back and prioritize your own well-being was necessary. That too is a sacred kind of ending, and sometimes unexpectedly it becomes the beginning of a season of real strength. They know now that if they ever approach you again, casualness will not work. Minimal effort will not work. Surface-level charm without substance will not work. Emotional language without behavioral follow-through will not work. You are no longer standing in the place where easy access lives. You are standing in the place where truth has to genuinely earn its presence. That changes everything about the situation. It raises the stakes considerably. It makes honesty unavoidable. And honesty is genuinely difficult for someone who has spent a long time protected by emotional distance. Real love can only move forward through consistent truth, accountability, and changed behavior, and sometimes the deepest act of self-respect is choosing your own peace instead of waiting for someone unwilling to fully meet you. So if they are feeling the loss, allow them to feel it fully. If they are genuinely learning something, let the learning happen. If they are actually changing, time will make that evident. And if they are not, time will make that equally evident. Your responsibility is not to accelerate the lesson for them or to rescue them from the consequences of their own choices. Your responsibility is to stay completely honest with your own heart. Watch what gets done, not only what gets said. Watch what actually stays, not only what appears during emotionally heightened moments. And if this found you at the precise moment you needed it, then perhaps you already know the final truth that has been sitting beneath everything. The question was never whether your absence would have an effect on them. The question has always been whether anything genuinely real, consistently steady, and truly worthy can finally rise in the place where so much silence used to stand.